The morning sun sparkled on Lake Fairview as Frank Reeves cast his fishing line into the calm water. Birds sang in the trees around his small wooden cabin. After 20 years in the Special Forces, this peaceful spot in rural Ohio was all he wanted. No more fighting. No more missions. Just quiet days by the lake. Frank watched the red and white bobber float on the surface. His weathered hands held the fishing rod steady. At 45, his brown hair showed touches of gray and lines marked his face, but his body remained strong. Years of training had made sure of that. A flash of light in the sky caught his eye. Frank looked up, squinting against the sun. Something moved across the blue sky, too fast for a plane, too large for a bird. Then it was gone, disappearing behind the tree line to the north. Strange, Frank muttered. He reached for his phone to check if there were any reports of meteors, but found no signal. That was odd, too. He always had service here, even if it wasn't strong. The fishing forgotten, Frank packed up his gear and walked back to the cabin. Inside, he tried the small television. Nothing but static on every channel. The radio was the same. Something was blocking all signals. Frank felt a familiar tightening in his chest. The same feeling he got before missions went sideways. He moved to the window and looked north toward where the light had disappeared. A thin column of smoke rose above the trees about 2 miles away. In the kitchen, Frank opened a drawer and took out his old service pistol. He hoped he wouldn't need it. But 20 years of training had taught him to be ready. He filled a backpack with water, a first aid kit, and some energy bars, then headed out. The forest was quiet as Frank made his way through it. Too quiet. No birds sang, no squirrels ran up trees. Even the insects seemed to have gone silent. Frank moved carefully, his feet making almost no sound on the soft ground. After an hour of hiking, he smelled it. Burnt metal and something else. Something strange that made his nose wrinkle. Frank slowed down, crouching lower as he moved from tree to tree. The crash site appeared suddenly as he passed a large oak. In a small clearing lay what could only be called a spacecraft. It was about the size of a delivery van, shaped like a teardrop with a shiny metal surface that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. Part of it had broken open, revealing strange lights and devices inside. Frank stayed hidden, watching the crash site for 10 minutes. Nothing moved. No sound came from the craft. Finally, he stepped into the clearing, gun ready. As he got closer, Frank saw that the metal wasn't just changing colors. It seemed to be trying to match the surroundings like advanced camouflage. He touched it carefully. It felt warm and slightly soft, almost alive. A noise from inside the craft made him jump back. Something was moving in there. Frank raised his gun and waited. A figure emerged from the broken section of the craft. It stood on 2 legs but was clearly not human. Taller than Frank by at least a foot, with gray-green skin that had the same color-shifting quality as the spacecraft. Its arms were too long, its fingers too many. Its face was flat, with 3 large, black eyes and a small mouth. The creature saw Frank and made a sound like rocks grinding together. It was hurt. Green liquid dripped from a wound on its side. But injured or not, it moved fast. It lunged at Frank with surprising speed. Frank fired twice. The bullets hit the creature but seemed to do little damage. It kept coming. Frank dodged to the side as the alien swung a long arm at him. The creature was strong but clumsy. Frank used this to his advantage, moving quickly around it, staying out of reach. The alien pulled something from its suit, a small device that glowed blue. It pointed it at Frank. Acting on instinct, Frank threw himself to the ground as a beam of energy shot over his head, burning the tree behind him. Rolling to his feet, Frank charged forward before the creature could fire again. He tackled it around, its thin waist driving it back against the spacecraft. The alien dropped its weapon as they fell to the ground. They struggled in the dirt, the alien trying to wrap its long fingers around Frank's throat. Frank punched at the wound on its side. The creature shrieked and loosened its grip. Frank broke free and scrambled for the alien weapon. The device felt strange in his hand, but he found what looked like a trigger. The alien was getting up, reaching for something else in its suit. Frank pointed the weapon and pressed the trigger. A blue beam shot out, hitting the creature in the chest. It fell back, green liquid spraying from the wound. Frank stood over, the dying alien, his heart pounding. The creature looked up at him with those large black eyes. Then it reached slowly into its suit again. Frank tensed, ready to fire once more, but the alien pulled out a small round object and pressed something on it. A voice came from the object, speaking English with a strange, vibrating quality. Human language detected. Translation active. Frank stared in shock. "You understand me?" "Yes," the voice translated as the alien made more grinding sounds. "Fleet Admiral Zix Cora will avenge this insult." "Fleet Admiral? There are more of you?" The alien's mouth moved in what might have been a smile. "Many more. In orbit now. Preparing. You were just first test subject. More will come." Frank felt cold fear run down his spine. "Why are you here? What do you want?" "Your world, resources, specimens. Admiral Zix Cora has conquered 17 worlds. Yours will be 18. The alien's breathing grew more labored. Green liquid pooled beneath it. "Too bad. You won't live to see it." Its hand moved suddenly, pressing another device on its suit. A bright red light began blinking and a high-pitched sound filled the air. "What did you do?" Frank demanded. "Beacon activated," the alien gasped. "They come for you now." The creature's eyes dimmed. Its breathing stopped. Frank stood alone in the clearing with the dead alien, the red light on its suit still blinking. The beacon was calling something or someone to this exact spot. Frank quickly searched the alien's body and the spacecraft, gathering anything that might be useful. The translator, the weapon, and a few other devices he didn't recognize. Then, he headed back toward his cabin at a run. He needed to prepare. They were coming for him now. High above Earth, in a massive ship hidden from human detection, Fleet Admiral Zix Cora received the beacon alert. The scout ship was down. The scout, dead, killed by a human according to the final transmission. The Admiral's large eyes narrowed. In 17 conquests, no primitive species had ever killed one of his elite scouts. "Prepare an extraction team," he ordered his commander. "I want this human captured alive. I wish to study the one who accomplished this unusual feat." The commander bowed and left to carry out the order. Admiral Zix Cora turned to look at the blue planet on the view screen. This human would soon learn what happened to those who defied the Vikathari Empire. But first they would learn everything this unusual specimen could teach them. The Admiral did not yet know that he had just made the biggest mistake of his long career. He had picked the wrong human to test. 3 days passed since Frank encountered the alien. He had not wasted time. His cabin, once a place of peace, was now a fortress. Frank moved the furniture to block windows, set tripwires across entry points, and placed makeshift alarms around the property. The alien devices he took from the crash site sat on his kitchen table. He had studied them as best he could. The translator proved most useful. Frank discovered it could pick up alien communications when adjusted properly. He listened to strange voices speaking about extraction teams and specimen capture. They were coming for him, just as the dying alien had promised. Frank checked his old service pistol again. He had limited ammunition and doubted it would do much good against advanced alien technology. The alien weapon he took worked better, but its power was dropping. A green bar on its side had shrunk each time he tested it. Night fell on the 3rd day. Frank sat in darkness, watching the tree line through his night vision goggles. The lake reflected moonlight, creating eerie shadows. The usual forest sounds had returned since the crash, but now they went quiet again. Frank tightened his grip on the alien weapon. They were here. He spotted them moving through the trees. 4 tall shapes using the same color-shifting camouflage as the scout. They moved with purpose, surrounding the cabin. These weren't clumsy like the injured scout. They moved like trained soldiers. Frank retreated to his chosen defensive position, in the back room. He had prepared escape routes and fighting positions throughout the cabin. The aliens would find catching him harder than they expected. The front door burst open with a crash. A bright light swept through the front room. Frank stayed still, controlling his breathing as he had been taught long ago. Through a small hole in the wall, he watched two aliens enter, carrying weapons similar to the one he had taken. They spoke in grinding voices, moving carefully through the room. One touched the furniture with long fingers, examining the human objects with curiosity. They passed by Frank's hiding spot and moved toward the kitchen. Frank slipped out from his position and moved silently behind them. He triggered the first trap, a simple tripwire connected to a shelf of heavy tools. Metal objects crashed down on one alien. It wasn't enough to hurt it badly, but the surprise was what Frank needed. As the aliens turned toward the noise, Frank fired the alien weapon at the closest one. The blue beam hit it squarely and the alien dropped. The second alien fired back quickly, the beam missing Frank by inches and burning a hole through the wall. Frank rolled across the floor as another alien burst through the front door. He triggered a second trap. Cooking oil spilled across the floor. The alien slipped, crashing into a table. Frank fired again, taking down the second alien, but the third regained its balance quickly. A beam hit the wall near Frank's head. He felt intense heat as wood splintered. He ducked behind the refrigerator and pushed it over, using it as a shield. The alien fired again, the beam partially melting the refrigerator's side. Frank crawled to the kitchen counter, grabbed a propane canister from his camping stove, and rolled it toward the alien. Then he shot it with the alien weapon. The explosion rocked the cabin, sending flames through the front room. The third alien fell, its suit burning. Before Frank could move, something crashed through the window behind him. The fourth alien tackled him, sending them both sliding across the floor. The alien weapon flew from Frank's hand. The alien was incredibly strong, pinning Frank down with long arms. "Impressive for a primitive," a voice said in English, coming from a translator device on the alien's suit. "Commander Vrex will take you now." Frank reached for his hidden knife and plunged it into the alien's side. Green liquid spurted out, but the alien didn't loosen its grip. Instead, it struck Frank hard across the face. Stars exploded in his vision. "Enough resistance," the alien, Commander Vrex, said. "Admiral Zix Cora is waiting." Through the ringing, in his ears, Frank heard more aliens entering the burning cabin. His world went dark as something pressed against his neck. Frank woke in a small room with metal walls that shifted colors like the alien's skin. His hands were bound by energy fields that glowed blue. He sat on a flat surface that served as a bed or examination table. His head throbbed with pain. The door, a section of wall that simply disappeared, opened. A tall alien entered. Unlike the others, this one wore elaborate markings on its suit and face. Its three eyes studied Frank. With obvious interest. "The human awakens," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Fleet Admiral Zix Cora of the Vakthari Empire. You have caused me considerable trouble." Frank said nothing, studying the alien leader instead. He noted the location of devices on its suit, the way it moved, any information that might help him later. "4 of my extraction team dead," Zix Cora continued. "Plus my scout. Very unusual. Most species we encounter can barely harm one Vakthari warrior, even with their primitive weapons." "Sorry to disappoint you," Frank finally said. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Not disappointment, interest. You will help us understand human combat capabilities before we begin the main invasion." Frank kept his face neutral, but his mind raced. Main invasion, they were planning to attack Earth in force. "Commander Vrex," Zix Cora called, and another alien entered the room. "This is the warrior who captured you. He speaks highly of your resistance." Commander Vrex looked at Frank with what seemed like respect. The human fought well, better than expected. "How many ships do you have?" Frank asked, trying to gather information. Zix Cora gestured around. "This vessel alone could destroy your largest cities. We have 12 such ships in orbit. Your planet's defenses cannot detect us. Your weapons cannot harm us. Resistance is pointless." Frank noticed how freely the Admiral shared information. The alien clearly didn't consider him a threat anymore. "What do you want with Earth?" Frank asked. "Resources, test subjects, new territory for the Empire." Zixcora moved closer. "Your species is particularly interesting, more adaptable than most we encounter. Some of you, like yourself, show promise. Perhaps a few will be kept as specialized servants after the conquest." "You'll find humans don't serve well," Frank said. "All species say this before they are conquered." The Admiral responded dismissively. "The Vikathari have subjugated 17 worlds across 3 star systems. Earth will be no different." The Admiral turned to leave. "Rest. Tomorrow, Chief Scientist Mixelara begins the examination procedures. They will be thorough." After the aliens left, Frank tested his restraints. The energy fields held firm. The room had no obvious weak points, but Frank had been a prisoner before, in places far less pleasant than this clean cell. He had escaped then. He would escape now. Frank closed his eyes, reviewing everything he had seen on the ship so far. The technology, the guards, the corridors, they had brought him through. The Admiral had made a critical mistake. He had shown Frank too much, thinking a primitive human couldn't possibly understand or use the information. Frank smiled slightly. Admiral Zixcora would soon learn he had picked the wrong human to underestimate. Frank woke to the sound of the cell door opening. 2 guard aliens entered, their weapons pointed at him. The blue energy fields around his wrists disappeared. "Stand," one guard ordered through its translator. "Follow. No resistance or punishment follows." Frank stood slowly, his muscles stiff from the hard surface he had slept on. He followed the guards out of the cell into a long corridor with the same color-shifting walls. Other aliens moved through the ship, some wearing the same warrior outfits as his guards, others in different clothing that probably showed different jobs. They led Frank through many corridors. He memorized the path, noting all side passages and doors. The ship was huge, like a floating city. After many turns, they arrived at a large door that slid open automatically. Inside was a room filled with strange equipment. Tables with straps, machines with blinking lights, sharp tools laid out in neat rows. Frank's stomach tightened. This was clearly a laboratory. A smaller alien approached. This one had lighter skin and more delicate hands with extra fingers. It wore a covering that reminded Frank of a lab coat. "Specimen has arrived," the alien said in that grinding language, translated by a device on its suit. "Secure it for examination." "I am Chief Scientist Mixelara," the alien said to Frank. "You will provide valuable data on human physiology and neural patterns." The guards pushed Frank toward one of the tables. He did not resist yet. Timing was everything. They secured him to the table with more energy fields around his wrists, ankles, and waist. Mixelara moved closer with a device that looked like a silver helmet with wires attached. "This will map your brain functions. It may cause discomfort. Try not to move or the process will take longer." As the scientist reached to place the helmet on Frank's head, a loud alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed along the walls. The guards looked at each other, clearly confused. "What is happening?" Mixelara demanded into a communication device. A voice responded in the alien language. Frank couldn't understand the words, but the tone suggested urgency. "Power fluctuation in Sector 7, the scientist told the guards. "Security protocols activated. Wait here with the specimen. I must check if our equipment is affected." Mixelara hurried out of the room, leaving Frank with the 2 guards. They stood at attention, weapons ready, but their attention was partly on the flashing lights and continued alarm. Frank had noticed something important when the alarm started. The energy fields holding him had flickered slightly. The ship's power system was having problems. This might be his only chance. He tensed his muscles against the restraints, testing them. Yes, they were weaker now. The alarm continued, distracting the guards. Frank focused all his strength on his right arm, pushing against the energy field. With a faint sizzling sound, his wrist broke free. Frank moved fast. Before the guards could react, he reached for a nearby tray of tools and grabbed something sharp. He threw it at one guard, hitting it in the eye. The alien shrieked in pain, dropping its weapon. The second guard fired, but Frank had already rolled off the table, his other restraints weakening enough for him to break free. The energy beam hit the table where he had been a second before. Frank dived for the fallen guard's weapon and fired at the second guard. The alien fell backward, a smoking hole in its chest. Frank turned and finished the injured first guard as well. Alarms still blared. Frank knew he had little time. He searched the laboratory quickly, finding a small device similar to the translator he had taken from the scout. He attached it to his shirt. Now he could understand the announcements coming through the ship's communication system. Security. Breach in laboratory section, a voice announced. All available units respond. Human specimen escaped. Capture alive by order of Admiral Zix Cora. Frank grabbed both alien weapons and looked around the room. There was no time to explore the corridor. He noticed a panel in the ceiling that looked like it might be a maintenance access. Using a table to reach it, he pushed the panel open and pulled himself up into a narrow tunnel. The tunnel was tight but large enough for him to crawl through. It appeared to be part of the ship's ventilation or maintenance system, perfect for moving unseen. Frank began crawling, choosing directions that seemed to lead away from the laboratory area. After navigating through the tunnel system for what felt like hours, Frank heard voices below. He paused at another panel and listened carefully. The voices spoke English. "Please, I've told you everything I know," a woman's voice said. "I'm just a programmer. I don't know any military secrets." Frank carefully shifted the panel to look down. Below was another laboratory, smaller than the first. A human woman was strapped to a chair while an alien questioned her. No guards were visible, just the one alien scientist. Frank dropped down from the ceiling, landing behind the alien. Before it could turn, he struck it hard at the base of its skull. The alien collapsed. The woman stared at him with wide eyes. "Who are you? How did you get here?" "Frank Reeves," he said, freeing her from the restraints. "Former Special Forces. These things picked me up a day ago. You?" "Eliza Winters," she said, rubbing her wrists. "I was working late at my cybersecurity job in Cleveland when they took me. 3 days ago, I think. It's hard to keep track of time here." Frank handed her one of the alien weapons. "Can you use this?" Eliza examined it. "Point and shoot, right?" "I can manage." She looked stronger now that she was free. "Do you have a plan?" "Working on it," Frank said. "I need to find a way off this ship, but more importantly, I need to warn Earth about what's coming." "I might be able to help with that," Eliza said. "They've been questioning me about Earth's computer systems. I've seen their technology up close. It's advanced, but I understand some basic principles. If we can find a control room or communication center, I might be able to send a message." New alarms started. The unconscious alien must have triggered a silent alert. "We need to move," Frank said, looking up at the ceiling tunnel. "Can you climb?" Eliza nodded. Frank helped her up, then followed. They crawled through the maintenance tunnels together. "They're planning an invasion," Frank told her as they moved. "The admiral in charge, Zix Cora, says they have 12 ships. They've done this 17 times before on other worlds." "I overheard them talking," Eliza added. "They're jamming all Earth communications. No one knows they're here yet." They reached a junction in the tunnel system. Frank paused, trying to decide which way to go. "If we want to send a message, we need to find a communication hub," Eliza said. "In a ship this size, it would likely be near the center or close to the command area." Frank nodded. "And if we want to escape, we need to find their smaller ships or escape pods, probably near the outer sections." They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. "We're not leaving without warning Earth first," Eliza said, firmly. Frank smiled slightly. "My thoughts exactly. Center of the ship it is." They turned toward the tunnel that seemed to lead inward. As they crawled, Frank realized something important. Admiral Zix Cora had made another mistake. By capturing more than one human, he had given them a chance to work together. Humans were at their most dangerous when they had a common enemy, and the Admiral was about to discover just how dangerous the wrong humans could be. Frank and Eliza crawled through the ship's maintenance tunnels for what seemed like hours. They passed over rooms filled with alien technology, storage areas, and even places where other humans were held in cells. Frank wanted to free them all, but they had to stay focused on their main goal, finding a way to warn Earth. "Wait," Eliza whispered, pointing to a panel below them. "Look at that room." Frank peered through a small gap. The room below was different from others they had seen. It contained many screens and control panels. 2 aliens worked at the stations. "That looks like a communication center," Eliza said. "If I can get to those controls, I might be able to send a message to Earth." Frank studied the room. "Only 2 guards. We can handle that. But we need a distraction first." He thought for a moment, then checked the alien weapon he had taken. "These corridors must connect to other systems. Let's find something we can use to create a diversion." They backtracked to a junction and took a different path. Soon they found what looked like power conduits running along a larger tunnel. Frank examined them carefully. "If we damage these in another section of the ship, it might draw attention away from the communication room," he said. Eliza nodded. The aliens seemed very concerned about system failures. It could work. Frank aimed his weapon at the conduits, in a spot far from the communication center. He fired 3 quick shots, sparks flew and alarms immediately began to sound. They quickly moved back toward the communication room. When they reached it again, they saw one of the aliens leaving, presumably to check on the new damage. Only one remained. "Now," Frank said. They removed the panel and dropped into the room. The remaining alien turned in surprise. Before it could react, Frank fired. The alien fell to the floor. Frank checked the corridor to make sure no one had heard, then secured the door. "I need to work fast," Eliza said, sitting at one of the control stations. Her fingers moved over the strange symbols. "These systems are advanced, but the basic principles are similar to ours. I think I can figure this out." Frank stood guard while Eliza worked. After several minutes, she smiled. "I've got it. They use some kind of quantum communication that bypasses our jamming. I can send a message directly to Earth's military networks." "What should we tell them?" Frank asked. "Everything," Eliza said grimly. "The invasion fleet, their technology, their plans. I'm downloading ship schematics and weapons data too." A red light began flashing on the console. Eliza frowned. "They've detected unauthorized access. We don't have much time." Frank moved to the door. "How much longer do you need?" "Just a few more minutes. I'm sending everything I can find." The ship's communication system suddenly activated. Admiral Zixcora's voice filled the room. "Attention, human fugitives. You have accessed restricted systems. This is futile. All escape routes are now locked down. Surrender immediately, or we will execute the remaining human captives one by one." Frank and Eliza looked at each other. "He's bluffing," Frank said. "They need those humans for their research." "I don't want to take that chance," Eliza replied. "But I've sent enough data now. Earth's military will know what's coming." The console beeped. "Transmission complete," Eliza said with satisfaction. "Then it's time to deliver our own message to the Admiral," Frank said. "Can you locate the command center from here?" Eliza tapped more symbols. A map appeared on the screen. "Here," she pointed. 5 levels up, center of the ship. "That's where Zixcora will be," Frank said. "If we can reach him, we might be able to stop this invasion before it starts." "How?" "We're just 2 people against an entire invasion fleet." Frank checked his weapon. "Sometimes you don't need an army. You just need to remove the leader." They heard noises in the corridor outside. Security forces had arrived. "There's another way out," Eliza said, pointing to what looked like a transport tube in the corner of the room. "This ship has an internal transport system. We can use it to reach the command level directly." They hurried to the tube as pounding began on the door. The transport system was simple enough to operate. Eliza entered the command level, and the tube activated. They felt a brief sensation of movement, then the door opened again. They had arrived on a new level. The corridors here were wider, the lighting brighter. This was clearly an important area of the ship. "The command center should be this way," Eliza said, consulting the map she had memorized. They moved carefully, but strangely encountered no resistance. The corridors were empty. "I don't like this," Frank muttered. "It's too easy." They reached a massive door that had to be the entrance to the command center. Frank raised his weapon. "Ready?" Eliza nodded, gripping her weapon tightly. The door slid, open before they could touch it. Inside was a large circular room with viewing screens showing Earth from orbit. In the center stood Admiral Zix Cora, surrounded by his command staff and several armed guards. "Welcome," the Admiral said calmly. "I've been expecting you." Frank and Eliza stepped inside, weapons raised. The guards didn't move to stop them. "Order your fleet to leave Earth now," Frank demanded. Admiral Zix Cora made that strange sound like laughter. "Or what? You'll shoot me? Look around you, human. You are surrounded." "We've already sent warning to Earth," Eliza said. "They know. You're coming now." "Yes, I'm aware of your transmission," the Admiral replied, surprising them both. "An impressive feat, truly, but ultimately meaningless. Your primitive military cannot stop us." Frank took a step forward. "Then why not just kill us? Why let us come here?" "Curiosity," the Admiral said. "No species has ever escaped capture on one of our vessels before. I wanted to see what you would do, how far you would get." He moved closer to Frank. "You continue to surprise me, human. Perhaps your species deserves more study before we begin the harvesting." "There won't be any harvesting," Frank said. "Earth isn't like the other worlds you've conquered." "They all say that," Commander Vrex commented from beside the Admiral. "Every world believes they are special, but none have produced specimens like you," Admiral Zix Cora said, studying Frank with his 3 large eyes. "A single human who killed my scout, defeated an extraction team, escaped our laboratory, freed another captive, breached our communications, and made it all the way to my command center." He sounded almost impressed. "You made one big mistake," Frank said. "And what was that?" the Admiral asked. "You picked the wrong human to start with." With lightning speed, Frank dropped to the floor and rolled, firing his weapon not at the Admiral, but at the control panels surrounding the command center. Eliza immediately understood and did the same, shooting at different panels. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the ship shuddered. Guards fired at them, but in the confusion, most shots missed. "Stop them!" the Admiral shouted. "They're destroying the command systems." Frank kept firing, hitting critical controls. One explosion rocked the entire room. Security doors began closing automatically as the ship's protection systems activated. The plan had worked. They might not defeat the entire alien fleet, but they could cripple the command ship and buy Earth more time. As smoke filled the room, Frank looked for Eliza. She was crouched behind a console, still firing at key systems. Their eyes met across the chaos. They had done all they could. Now they just had to survive long enough for Earth to prepare its defenses. Admiral Zix Cora's voice rose above the noise, filled with rage. "You will pay for this, human. No one defies the Vikathari Empire." Frank smiled grimly. The Admiral was about to learn an important lesson about humans. They never surrendered, especially when fighting for their home. Smoke filled the command center as systems sparked and exploded around them. Frank ducked behind a fallen piece of equipment as energy beams cut through the air above him. He spotted Eliza across the room, still firing at control panels. "Enough," Admiral Zix Cora roared. The alien commander pulled out a weapon unlike the others Frank had seen. It was smaller but glowed with intense blue light. "I will deal with this human myself." The Admiral fired at Frank's position, the equipment protecting him melted almost instantly from the powerful beam. Frank rolled away just in time, feeling the heat sear his back. "Commander Vrex," the Admiral shouted, "restore ship controls. Kill the female human if necessary, but I want this one alive." Frank looked across at Eliza, making eye contact. They had discussed this possibility. She gave a slight nod and started moving toward one of the side exits, drawing fire from the guards. Frank stood up, facing the Admiral directly. "You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you?" "Understand perfectly," Zix Cora said, advancing toward Frank. You're an unusually capable specimen, but still just a primitive being facing a superior species. Superior? Frank asked, backing up slowly, leading the Admiral away from Eliza. If you were superior, one human wouldn't have caused this much damage to your ship. The Admiral's 3 eyes narrowed in anger. He raised his weapon again. Frank dived behind a control station as another beam passed over his head. The ship shuddered around them as more systems failed. Admiral, Commander Vrex called out. Other human vessels are approaching. Earth's military forces have detected us and are moving to surround the fleet. On the main view screen, Frank could see small dots approaching the alien ships Earth was fighting back. The information they sent had reached its target. Impossible, Zixcora shouted. Their primitive technology cannot detect our ships. They are using our own scanner frequencies against us, Vrex explained. The data the humans transmitted included our cloaking signatures. Frank smiled. Eliza had sent more than just a warning. She had sent Earth's military everything they needed to fight back. The Admiral turned to Frank with pure hatred in his eyes. You have merely delayed the inevitable. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Maybe not, Frank admitted. But you've lost the element of surprise. And humans are very creative when we know what we're up against. As if to prove his point, the ship rocked violently. Warning lights flashed across all remaining functional screens. Multiple impacts on lower decks, an alien officer reported. Earth vessels are targeting our propulsion systems with weapons, modified to match our shield frequencies. Frank used the distraction to move closer to where Eliza was working. She had opened a panel in the wall and was connecting wires from her alien weapon to the ship's systems. What are you doing? Frank whispered. Creating a feedback loop in their weapons system, she explained quickly. If I can overload the main power grid, it might disable their shields completely. The Admiral saw them talking and charged forward, with surprising speed for his size. Before Frank could react, Zixcora grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Your resistance ends now, human, the Admiral growled. You will watch as I destroy your pathetic military forces. Then I will personally oversee the harvesting of your world. Frank struggled to breathe as the alien's grip tightened. The Admiral was incredibly strong, but Frank had been in worse situations during his Special Forces days. He remained calm, waiting for his moment. It came when the ship was hit by another barrage from Earth's forces. The Admiral's grip loosened slightly as he tried to keep his balance. Frank dropped a small object he had been concealing, a power cell he had removed from one of the alien weapons. It hit the floor and cracked open, releasing a burst of energy that shocked the Admiral. Zixcora stumbled backward, his skin smoking, where the energy had touched him. Frank fell to the floor, gasping for air. Frank, Eliza called. It's ready. Get down. Frank dropped to the floor as Eliza activated her device. A high-pitched whine filled the command center. Every piece of alien technology began to glow with strange light. What have you done? Commander Vrex demanded. Power feedback loop, Eliza said with satisfaction. Your weapon systems are feeding energy back into your main power grid. Shut it down, the Admiral ordered, still recovering from the shock. Emergency protocols. Too late, Eliza said. The cascade effect has already begun. The ship's lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. The main view screen showed Earth's military vessels moving in, no longer firing but surrounding the alien fleet. A communication signal came through on the remaining functional speakers. A human voice filled the command center. Alien vessel, this is General William Grant of Earth United Defense. Your shields are down, and your weapon systems are offline. We are prepared to destroy your entire fleet if necessary. Surrender immediately. The command center fell silent. Admiral Zixcora looked around at his damaged ship, his injured crew, and the 2 humans who had caused it all. For the first time, uncertainty showed in his 3 eyes. Commander Vrex stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, we should consider our options. The humans have disabled our main systems. The other ships report similar attacks. We are vulnerable. Never, Zixcora shouted. The Vikathari Empire does not surrender to primitive species. Then the Vikathari Empire will die today, Frank said calmly. Is that what you want? The complete destruction of your people because you're too proud to admit you made a mistake? The Admiral stared at Frank with hatred. Then, slowly, his posture changed. The alien seemed to shrink slightly, his confidence fading. Commander Vrex, he said finally. Send the surrender signal. Vrex nodded and moved to the communications panel. The Admiral turned to Frank. You have won today, human, but the Empire spans many star systems. They will come looking for us eventually. When they do, Frank replied, they'll find Earth ready for them. And next time, don't start by picking the wrong human. As the surrender was transmitted, Frank moved to stand beside Eliza. They watched as Earth's military vessels moved into position around the alien fleet. What happens now? Eliza asked quietly. Now we go home, Frank said, and we make sure Earth stays ready. 3 months later, Frank sat on the dock at his rebuilt cabin, fishing rod in hand. The lake was peaceful again, but the world had changed forever. Humanity now knew they weren't alone in the universe, and they were preparing accordingly. Earth's nations had united against the common threat. The alien technology had advanced human science by decades. Defense systems were being built using knowledge gained from the captured ships. A car pulled up to the cabin. Eliza stepped out, now wearing the uniform of the newly formed Earth Defense Force. How's the fishing? She asked, walking out onto the dock. Quiet, Frank replied. Just the way I like it. Enjoy it while you can, Eliza said. General Grant wants us back at headquarters tomorrow. The translation of the alien database is complete. There are at least 3 more hostile empires out there besides the V-Cathari. Frank sighed and reeled in his line. No rest for the wrong human, huh? Eliza smiled. No rest for any of us. But at least we know what's coming now. Frank looked up at the clear blue sky, knowing that beyond it the stars held both wonders and dangers. Earth would be ready next time. And if another alien fleet came looking for trouble, they'd better be careful which human they picked first.